Well, good evening. It's Monday, January 29th, 2024. Welcome to episode 48 of Porterhouse and Teal Live. Joining me tonight is Tesstamona, who was on the broadcast all the way back in episode 6, which was actually the first broadcast of last year. So welcome back again, Tess.
Thank you for having me. That's a trip. That was episode 6?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was actually January 3rd. I looked it up because I didn't know if it was like the new year or what. But yeah, that was a whole year ago. And
wow.
It's good to have you back. And, since the last time you were on, there has really been quite a number of different things that have taken place, not only domestically, but internationally. Mm-hmm. And I also understand there's been a few changes in your life as well. But before we get to any of that, why don't you tell folks who you are and what you do?
All right. So hello, everybody watching. My name is Tess. I go by the name of Tesstamona when I release music. I am also a writer on Substack. I write Memento Mori Alchemy by Tesstamona. And I am, above all, a lover and pursuer of truth and love and freedom in this world. I'm also a musician and a writer and a poet. And I'm a human being on planet Earth in 2024. So that, I guess, says enough right there.
Right on. Well, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you back, man, because I've enjoyed listening to some of your podcasts. And I think you're somebody who's pretty thoughtful. You're a deep thinker. And you've got a lot of good perspective on things from the standpoint of being somebody who's freedom-minded. And you've crammed a lot in your years on Earth. You've lived a lot and had a lot of experiences, and that's reflected in your podcasts and the way that you come across. So again, I appreciate you coming on. And I guess wanted to jump in with social media with you because the title of this was Exiting the Media Matrix. Mm-hmm. And you've recently decided to step away from social media and do kind of a cleanse, if you will. So what was the main reason for doing that?
That actually happened back in March. And the ultimate reason for it was I just, oh man, it makes you crazy. Like just have, especially as a creator, just always having that pressure on you to have to produce content and keep up with these imaginary deadlines that nobody actually cares about. And on top of that, you're trying to live your life. I was working multiple jobs at the time, and it was just really taking a toll on my mental health. And I didn't like it. And something in me was just telling me to like back off, like cut everything, like back away from all the apps and just get into nature. Like, obviously, yes, I still had to, show up to my job, but to just back up because I could just see that I was in a place in my life where I was not mentally doing well. And for me, it's very hard to tap into the signal that is intuition or my own voice when it is constantly jammed with noise and senseless noise and often toxic noise that you see on social media. So I stepped away. When I originally did, it was like 6 weeks. And then I had to start releasing more music. So I had to get back on there. And I had this like almost allergic reaction to it when I got back on. And since then, like I really can't handle more than being on one of those apps for like longer than maybe 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. Like if I have to go on to post something, I'll do it and I get right back off. But it's been nice to redirect my energy to what I'm actually doing in my life, as opposed to just dumping everything in this virtual void. It's done a lot.
Yeah. I guess from what we were talking about a little bit prior to this broadcast going live, and we were talking a little bit about how I think a lot of folks of the younger generation don't know anything other than the media and that way of communication. And there seems to be more of a emphasis on people's creating relationships through these apps. I don't know about you, but I think it's in many ways like a false world, right? It's fake.
It is. It's optics and delusion. So it can often become a breeding ground for deception, which can become very dangerous, especially if that manifests into like real life, because you don't know who you're dealing with. Um, but it's also like the most perfect vessel for all forms of propaganda. So there's that. It serves that purpose. But I think it does a number on people's um natural inclination or ability toward empathy. I think it like is starting to erode that. And I've noticed that they seem to have like a way harder time knowing how to interact with people face to face. Like everyone's just so quick to, oh, I have a half second of not being distracted. Let me just pull out my phone immediately and ignore everything and everyone around me and just go back into this world. So I really do think, like in some situations, if you're living at a distance from people or you want to connect with people in another state or another country, I see the necessity for it there, but definitely not as a substitution for in real life relations. You know what I mean? It's just I think it does a lot of damage, and it warps people's mind on how people actually are, because how people behave on the internet is not how people behave in real life. So it's very
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah, it's really easy to hide behind the screen. And there's so many people that are willing to say things that they would never say to your face. They'll say them through
Mhm.
the screen. And I think that kind of loss of humanity, essentially, right? Like, and a perfect example is Twitter. And I haven't been on Twitter in years, but it just was one of those types of environments that it just made me feel like I was dirty. Just going
Mhm.
on there because it was nothing but hate from either side. It was this person trying to get in their point, being a funny guy, saying something to demean that person. And then that was the whole point of Twitter, in my opinion. And I just, those types of things just leave you so unfulfilled. And so it's very easy for people to hide behind the screen and not have those real connections, because there's no way people would say shit like that to your face because they'd get a smackdown.
Oh, 100%. Which, I mean, ultimately, I feel like all of it is just it's bread and circuses at the end of the day. It is. It's just because I've seen, I've seen it for sure. And I think a lot of people on the planet are suffering very deeply right now, and they don't know how to deal with it. And so sometimes the easier thing for them is get on the internet and start screaming at people that you don't know, that you just see, and you think it's without consequence, but it's not. It still pollutes the collective energy, and it really jades people. But yeah, it's bread and circuses at the end of the day. And yeah, the stuff that some of the stuff I've seen, no, you would not even walk away from saying those things if you did that in real life. So again, it's not
Right.
good for the people even doing it, because it's giving them an unrealistic view of what actual life is about. If they try that off the internet, it's not going to go well for them.
Right. How much do you think that's actually by design, based on the algorithms and how they
100%.
feed you the information?
100%, all of it. The algorithms, well, and their designers, their ultimate goal, other than maybe another agenda, which we might get into, the ultimate goal is they want people on that platform as long as possible so they can continue to hypnotize you, and conform you to whatever kind of propaganda they want to feed you. And they are aware that anger is the most marketable emotion, even more than fear. All of them. So it's yeah, they will 100% put things in front of your face. Hey, I just saw that pop up in the corner. Hello. They'll 100% put things in front of your face. They know what triggers you. They study how long you look at each piece of content, how you engage with it, how frantic your typing pattern is or whatever, and they want to get you worked up and hooked so you stay on the app and so they can continue with the hypnosis.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword. I think for myself, there's been times where I've stepped away from social media for various different reasons. uh, partially because of what you said. It just kind of left you feeling unfulfilled. You're wasting your time. Um, and then there's other reasons as well, because of
Mhm.
what you're seeing on there. It makes you feel dirty. It makes you feel like, why am I even looking at this? It's pissing me off, and I don't need to be voluntarily getting myself pissed off. So,
Yeah.
but
No,
but there's,
absolutely not.
as you kind of alluded to, there's an awful lot that's actually really a positive, and I think using it to our advantage is a great way to stay connected for those that we may not have the ability to, just right around the corner. Hey, let's meet in real life. Let's go down and have lunch. But we can have these sorts of relationships and interactions long distance, which is kind of useful in a sense. No?
Yeah, for that, absolutely. I mean, like what we're doing right now, we wouldn't be able to do. And like, I technically met you, like virtually met you, via some type of YouTube connection before we met in person at Self Reliance Festival in Tennessee.
Hmm.
But that's what was so beautiful about Self Reliance Festival is I found out about it because I was at a different festival like that in Texas. And then I had found, but the reason why we all found out about that and could all come from different parts of the country and meet in real life was because either Telegram groups or, yeah, it was Telegram, for me at least. But yeah, so technology absolutely has a purpose as a tool. I think we get into trouble when we rely so heavily on it that it becomes a substitute, and then we become hypnotized and start to erode and wonder why there's so many different crises just within the collective psyche on its own. You know what I mean? Because there's this chronic disconnect and people wonder why. And it's
Right.
because there's a lack of person to person interaction, which was part of the agenda in 2020, like to isolate people. That's a tactic of subversion. If you want to take out a large group of people or an entire population, isolation is absolutely one of the first stages. So I think it should be used as a tool, but not as a substitution.
Right. Yeah, that's you had actually done a first time I learned of you was you had done a kind of a review of the Self-Reliance Festival that you had attended. And I wound up learning of you then, and then I wound up meeting you when I decided to go out there and go to Self-Reliance Festival. So it was kind of a nice way to close the loop in, hey, I've seen this person online, and now we've met in person. She's an actual real person. We went out and we had dinner out there with John, and yeah, it was just kind of cool,
Yeah.
having the opportunity to meet you that way. But as we were talking about before we went live, I think that's an important step that people should consider taking, because again, it's really nice to have online relationships. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate the people that um, come in and listen to these lives and are part of the community. But it's also very nice to meet people as well. I had the opportunity to meet Skane's girl. She was down in Kentucky, so that was cool. We got to meet in real life, and I've met Bobby um, several times now. So it's just really nice to kind of close that loop. And social media has the ability to bridge that gap. At least initially, it kind of opens the door, but there's obviously needs to be more to the story than just that online relationship. Because again, I think so many people in society, particularly the younger generation, that's all they know. They think that's actually a relationship. And as you pointed out, when they're together, they're sitting there on their phones. It's a trip, man. You see kids walking down the street and they're all staring at their fucking phones, or they're sitting there hanging out together, all looking at their phones at the same time. And it's just a thing, man. I don't know. It's definitely an addiction, shall we say.
Yes, yes. I was actually just thinking that in my head. Yes, it's very, very, very much an addiction. Absolutely. Yeah, it's wild. It really is. And I think I also think that's obviously by design, but I think that when you can get a population to pour so much of their life force energy into essentially a void, right? Like they're less likely to take any kind of action in real life. Um, and so it's it is an energy suck because people have less energy to actually do things in real life. Even if people want to go on the internet and speak out about whatever thing people are currently mad about. It's like, well, you're not going to do nothing about it in person, are you? Because you're spending all your energy hashtagging it away, and then you're burnt out, and then you're done. So I think it's like, it's just this weird data trap, energy, soul suck. If it's used the way that we're referring to it as, you know what I mean? I'm not saying everybody that uses technology is engaged in that. Like, obviously we're using technology right now, but when it does become like another appendage and you can't stop looking at that screen, and it just, I don't know. I couldn't do it. Like, I felt like I had to, because I was an artist and a musician, and I'm like, no, actually, I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. Like, I'll release things on my own terms, where I want to and when I want to. I do not have to do that. That's nuts. This is nuts.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about things. We are all in control of what we do, and
Yeah.
right. So it's interesting, the internet thing, because I don't think that the people that created it initially had. I don't think that they had in mind what's happening now. I don't know if they could have envisioned how this would have blossomed. It's almost like the people that took down the trade centers. I think they thought, hey, let's do this thing. But when it fucking, like, the buildings like just imploded, I think they were like, holy shit, what just happened? And I think it's the same with the internet, where they created this thing not really knowing where it was going to land. And now they've got this tool that the authoritarians can yield ultimate power over people by controlling their minds. And a lot of people, I think, honestly, don't even realize that it's occurring to them, because they haven't broken out of the idea of following the mainstream narrative of, oh, no, the government's my friend, and these people wouldn't do those certain things. But people who are free thinkers and can think outside of the box and are willing to look at alternative sources of information get a little bit different perspective on that. And like I say, I think it's now being used in a way that they hadn't originally intended, but it's working out to their advantage, not ours.
Yeah, it's hard to speculate on intention. I mean, I've obviously like done some research into that as well. Can I 100% verify that the documents I've read are authentic? No, because I was not there when they were written, right? So like, I can't say that for sure. But which I'm referring specifically to the documents that are known as silent weapons for quiet wars, and the original silent weapon being the computer. And in these documents, it talked about how it was designed originally with the purpose of being able to predict the point of human capitulation. Which I had to look what capitulation meant up when I read that, and which means like, submission or collapse, or just the total castration of a human being. So it was a pretty sinister document, I'll say that much. But in reading it, it's undeniable that whether that's authentic or not, what is in that document is something that you can see around you all the time. So it's definitely suggest it if somebody hasn't read it. But I don't know what for sure what the purpose was, but I certainly do see how it's being used now. Absolutely.
Was that a CIA program?
Alleged. Oh, you mean the computer or the
that document you're referring to? I've never heard of that, but it sounds like some kind of a program that the CIA would put into play.
I would not be. Well, I mean, it definitely had a lot of like roots of what would then later go on to become Operation Mockingbird. So I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know. If I talk about allegedly, what's tied to those documents is allegedly those were presented at the first Bilderberg group meeting, like when they first became the Bilderberg group. This would have, like, again, allegedly, because I was not there, but it would have been right before World War II. And so, I mean, it does line up pretty well with the way things have gone, and also with the way that things are, even down to, they have these, for people who like understand engineering formulas or statistics or whatever, they have like formulas that they use even to like be able to control, even to be able to control the economy. And I'm not like, I'm not an engineer, right? So like those formulas, I would read them and I'd try to understand them. I'm like, I don't, but when they'd explain it, I would understand it. But if there's, people that are engineers out there, I would definitely suggest looking into those documents, because you might understand those formulas and equations a lot better than me. So
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting conspiracy, I suppose.
alleged. Yeah.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Yeah. I mean, it's like, even if it's not authentic, I mean, it's still, you can open your eyes and see it. Like it's 100%. I mean, you'll never look at like this thing that we call reality. I don't mean like the great, all magnificent reality. I mean like the false reality. You'll never look at it again the same way ever if you read that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've been somebody who's been pretty publicly outspoken about your addiction and your sobriety,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to commend you on your sobriety. I think that is something that every time I see it, it's just, I mean, I don't know if people understand the importance of being able to get a hold of your life in a way that turns it around like that. And like I say, I'm proud of you every time I see that. So I just wanted you to know that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people have addictions and they don't even realize that they do. And they do, and they say things to justify the things that they're doing in a way that makes it seem okay. And I'll use myself as an example, because there was a time in my life when I would drink quite a bit of beer. I'll still have a beer now and then, but I don't drink to excess any longer. I might drink one beer, two beers, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm done with this. And I think that's just a natural process of me deciding to wean myself off, because it's nothing that I really feel like I need. But there was a time when I would drink a fucking 30 pack in like 3.5 days. And I would say things to myself like, well, it's just beer. I'm not drinking hard stuff. Right. Or, well, here was my rule, that I wouldn't crack a beer until afternoon. And I would tell myself, well, at least I'm not drinking in the morning. Just little mind games like that, little mental gymnastics. And so I guess my question to you is, did you use any mental gymnastics to convince yourself that what you were doing was okay?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, for backstory, super briefly, I got clean and sober in 2009, and I've been sober ever since. But prior to that, I started my first drink. I was really young. We don't need to talk about that. But I did start with alcohol, and by the time I had finally stopped, I was strung out on heroin. So yeah, I'm glad that I'm sober, because I wouldn't be alive. No way. But as far as the mental gymnastics, 100%. I still will do those today, sober, just around other things, like how you mentioned addictions. I think we talked about this before the show, but addictions are not, just drugs and alcohol. They're many, many things. And it once you get rid of those two things, you realize how much it almost feels like playing whack-a-mole. But yeah, as far as when I was using and drinking, I had the most ridiculous excuses ever to do the most insane shit. Like I don't even know some of the stuff. I'm like, I don't even know if I should say that on the internet. Give me an example, or how honest do you want me to be?
As honest as you want to be. I'm, as I told you, I don't think that we should be self-censoring ourselves to the
Yeah.
extent that we can't speak freely. So I would like you to speak as freely as you feel comfortable doing. So.
It is hard to remember a lot of those years, I'll be honest. I feel like there's many years of my life that kind of all mold into a quilt of maybe one. So it's hard to remember, but before I got to the point where I was like, oh my God, this is really bad, I have to stop. I don't know if there was any consciousness of like what I was truly doing, and honestly how dangerous that was, because a lot of the people, if not most of who I came up with, are not here today. So like, you know, I've had a lot of thoughts because I've had them pass actually in the recent years. And a lot of a big part of me was like, if I could just go back in time and tell the younger versions of ourselves, like what we were actually doing and that all these people were going to die. Like I would have given my own life to have been able to do that, you know, but it doesn't work like that. But as far as the gymnastics, once I got into the place of like knowing something was wrong, but not being able to stop, I mean, I don't even know. I would maybe try to, you know, get off heroin by like going and getting methadone or like Suboxone or something off the street, trying to detox myself. And I would never make it, but like, let's say I made it a few days off this like substitute drug and I was like, I'm never doing it again. The sun could come out and I'd be like, oh, it's a great, like, I got to go get high because it's such a nice day. Like it didn't have to be anything at all. It could have rained and I would have used that as an excuse as well. Something a little bit more dramatic is like a lot of what I used to do to get money for drugs is, you know, obviously frowned upon for good reason, but I would rob people. And I would break into houses and I would do, you know, really bad stuff like that. And, I blamed it on the econ. Like, I don't know what junkie is like blaming their shit on the economy, but I was so young too, but I'm like, it's the economy. Like if we were so broke, we wouldn't have to like rob people and do heroin. Like somehow that made sense to me. And it felt like I was justified, and just, it could have been the dumbest shit ever. It's honestly hard to remember, but, there would always be that little voice of like, oh, it's fine. I'll just quit tomorrow. I'll just quit Monday. I'll just quit this day. I'll just cut back. I'll just switch to this. I'll just blah, 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 blah. None of it ever, in my experience, none of that ever worked. It had to be like a full, complete 100% cutoff of all of it. And then after that, because getting sober is one thing, staying sober is actually a completely different ballgame, completely different. And that requires a complete transformation of everything: your mind, your psyche, your spirit, your health, your body, your environment, the people you surround yourself with, your thinking, your impulses, like just literally everything has to change. And that's why it can scare people. But if people are willing to walk the road and willing to deal with the fear of the unknown and the fear of uncertainty, the reward for doing that, aside from, you know, being alive, is unlike anything you can possibly imagine, especially if you were like me and that's the only life you ever knew, like by far.
Yeah, I think that probably a lot of people, and I would almost put myself in this camp with regard to tobacco. And as you said, you do those mental gymnastics, and one of them is also this. People know they're doing the wrong thing. They know it's unhealthy for them, but they've decided to convince themselves, well, there's tomorrow, or I'll quit next year, or I'll do these things somewhere down the road. It's not too late, right? I'm still young enough where I can continue to smoke, or I continue to drink, or I continue to do these things that are unhealthy for me, right? Because there's always tomorrow. But what happens when there's not tomorrow? I guess that's the question. And for a lot of people that are on heroin and on serious ass drugs, street drugs,
there is no
that
tomorrow.
wind up getting the wrong shit, there is no tomorrow, because they get something bad and they wind up dying from it. My brother died of a drug overdose, heroin. And that was a huge fucking shock to my family.
Shit. Had we talked about that before?
I don't think so. Because
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. It's not something I really publicly talked about, but yeah, it's a shock when those things happen. You know, somebody's there, and then the next day they're not there. And you've had to deal with that quite a bit, right?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'm sorry that you're also familiar with that. But yeah, I mean, it's almost a little like dissociating. I mean, I've found a way to create meaning out of it. And in a weird way, it also deepened my capacity to love. It didn't harden me. In some areas it did, but that wound up going away. But it is really nuts, like looking back on pictures of maybe just 10 years ago or 6 years ago. And in some pictures, I'm the only one that's still here. And I don't say that in any like, oh, cool, I made it. Like, no, 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 no. That's a horrible feeling. Like when you look at pictures that were some of the happiest times in your life, and in my sobriety, you know, because a lot of these people, I knew them from recovery, and you know, they played tremendous roles in my life, and I loved them more than anything. These are my closest people. Um, and then to look back and just see that they're all gone, it's just like, you know, it can put you in a very dark place. And I actually had been in that dark place. I only recently came out of it. Actually, I had been in that very, very dark place for a couple years, because I don't think I knew how to handle that much death. And you're right, when it happens like that, it's very sudden. It's like you just saw them, like, and you were supposed to see them again in a few days, and then all of a sudden, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was kind of weird. You know, I don't want to talk about this too much more, but just like with my brother, nobody even fucking knew that he was doing that. And it was like, you know, you get this phone call after the Super Bowl. It was the year the Raiders were in the Super Bowl, and he was fucking found dead in his house. We're like, what happened there? And they did the autopsy, and he was, you know, drug overdose. So it's just one of those things that it's something that affects a lot of people. We've got a huge problem in this country, not only with people who have been prescribed medication, and that's even more insidious because pharmaceutical companies are making billions of dollars pushing drugs out to people that they know are extremely addictive and causing people to become dependent upon that. And then they somehow feel like it's justified because, hey, my doctor says I can take these. You know, it says right here I can take one every 4 hours.
Yes, that is the topic I could go off about for a very long time. So I'll try to restrain myself. But I'm very familiar with how insidious that is as well.
Yeah.
And I have been for a long time. And I myself have gotten caught in that as well, where like, you know, you might have a health condition, you might get prescribed something, you get told, oh, you need this, da da da. It winds up making you 1,000 times worse. You're like, absolutely not. I do not need this. This is making me worse. I want off this. And then they wind up like, you don't get any help from a doctor trying to get off of a med. You know what I mean? They're not trained to, oh, Derek, they're not trained to get you off drugs. They're trained to put you on them and keep you on them and just keep guinea pigging you until you don't even know who the hell you are anymore. And I've seen this in some of the people I love more than anything in the world too. And it's, I'm so proud of the ones who have been able to get off of them. And I very much understand how hard it is to do that, because a lot of these drugs, there's no date, no information on what happens to you when you come off of them. They're actually harder to get off of than the shit on the street. Like, I mean, take like something that a lot of people in this country take. A lot of people, and I'm not saying if someone's on it and in the like listening right now, like I'm not bagging on you, but a lot of people take antidepressants. Let's just use that as an example. Those can be harder to come off of, in my experience, than heroin, because the withdrawal is so long, and it makes no sense, and it warps your mind in a way that like I don't even have words for. And you of course can bounce back, but it can last for so long that the doctors will come back in and start telling the patient, oh, that's not the drug, that's just you without the drug. And then they convince this person that they have to be on these things forever, when in reality it's like, no, you're just taking shit that you don't even know what's in this. And the effects of coming off of it can last a long time. In some cases, it depends, obviously, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. We could talk about that for quite some time. I think the medical industry is it's got its good points, right? But as with any of these things, they've got their good points. The internet has its good points. there's a lot of things that's good about it. The fact that we're communicating right now live and you're on the other side of the country is an amazing thing. So I'm not going to sit here and shit talk the internet, but I've said this before and I'll say it again, that I think the world would be better off without the fucking internet.
Yeah.
I think that if we got back to Rolodexes and, licking stamps and putting shit in the mail, we'd probably be better off. We'd be a much more civil society, for one. We'd have a lot more connectivity with our fellow man, and things would just be, in my opinion, better. But maybe that's because I'm an old fuck and I'm not a Gen Xer, or excuse me, actually I am a Gen Xer. I'm not a Gen Zer or a millennial or a Gen Alpha. They're going to have a much different take on all of this than do I. But yeah, you got to take the good with the bad, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes down to the way that it's used and kind of just having the awareness within oneself, or developing it really, to know like when to utilize it and when to just back away, where to put your energy, because that's the true currency, and time is like the budget of that cosmic currency, but that's what it is. So, but
Right.
yeah, absolutely. I think that, if people weren't so much on these apps, communities would be a lot stronger. And, that's, again, I think, a little bit by design or a lot by design of, the weakening of communities, because no one's, people are there, but no one's really home. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to watch. Let me switch gears on you if we can change topics, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the pandemic. And I think it's pretty safe to say that most people have learned a great deal from the last 3 years. And now that we've had an additional year, both you and I, to observe and evaluate what took place during that period of time, I wanted to get your opinion on a few different issues. And I guess the first question I would have for you is, what surprised you the most about the pandemic? What was the thing you hadn't expected, and that it was just like a revelation to you? It surprised you the most?
Oh, two things. Three things. First one, as if we want to talk about a revelation, it was nobody's coming to save you. And I can explain why. But the area I was in, like physically, when that went down, that was a part of Los Angeles. I don't live there anymore. I live in Florida. But when I was in Los Angeles, I lived in the area where things were getting set on fire and the National Guard was there and there was just chaos nonstop. And nobody's, and there, no food on the shelves, yada, yada. No one's coming to save you when stuff kicks off, and you will have no warning when stuff kicks off either. So that caught my attention of how frail this system is. And also, how fragile everything is. But I think the thing that shocked me the most was the compliance and how willing people were to turn on their own friends and family because the TV told them to. Like, I mean, literally, that people would just start hating people that they had known their whole lives because they weren't singing the same, song of delusional propaganda. I don't care what side it's coming from, as them. And I experienced that too, like from people that I would have never in a million years thought would have acted like that. Never in a million years. And it was, I just couldn't believe there was no collective resistance. People just turned on each other. I could not believe how easily that happened. In hindsight, it does make sense though. But when it happened, I was just like shell shocked. I'm like, I'd get the hell off the West Coast. Like I got to get out of here. So I've moved a lot in the last couple of years.
You say that it made sense in hindsight. In what sense is that?
Well, let's take the compliance for, let's say, even like following along with things like, and I bear in mind, oh yeah, you're on the West Coast too. So like I was living in areas where they had mask mandates for 2 years. And people were so terrified of each other. Like I'd be walking on like a trail and some person with like multiple masks on their face would like see me coming. I did not have one on. I was walking outdoors, and they would run off the trail and into the woods like as if I was the most like I might as well have been a grizzly bear. It was unbelievable. And I'm like, wow, like you're that scared. But kind of what hit me is I was like, well, no wonder why it was so easy for people to start putting a mask on. We were already wearing masks. They just weren't physically manifested. But we've already been doing that. It's called like bullshitting or like hiding behind image or ego or just projecting something that you are not and thinking that's who you are because you do it so chronically. So we were already wearing a mask. That's why it was so easy to manifest it physically, I think, for a lot of people. And as far as like the distancing and the isolation, we were already doing that. It just wasn't being shown so dramatically physically. But if you look at human relations and kind of how things have been, if we're making generalizations, I'm not talking about every single person, but if we're making generalizations, like a lot of people, we've had a crisis of disconnect and inauthenticity and people trying to be something that they're not and lying to themselves and lying to others and us just accepting that as the status quo. How is that not social distancing? How is that not, a quarantining of one's own spirit in a lot of senses? So like when I started looking back on all of those things, I'm like, those were all just physical manifestations of like how we've been living our lives for, I think, a long time. They just showed up in a more obvious way. So that's what I meant by that.
Yeah, no, that's pretty insightful. It's funny you mentioned about the people on the trail because in 2020, my wife and I were hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, a portion of it anyhow. We decided to self-support and section hike probably about 600 miles in 2020. And it was interesting because the people that were out there that were through hiking, that were out there doing the thing, they were just being normal. It wasn't like we would see another hiker and freak out and, hey man, what's up? It was just like normal. It's just like people were just being normal. No distancing, no giving a shit. We were dirty as hell. We stunk, right? We're dirty, stinky hikers. And it'd be interesting. We'd come into an area where it'd be like a national park. Trail would go through a national park, and then there'd be all these day hikers, and you'd see them out on the trail, and they had their fucking whole family, and they're all masked up out on the trail, and then they'd see us coming, and they'd just like their eyes would get huge, and they'd like bolt off the trail like we were like the plague. And it's just an interesting thing to watch people that are so instilled with fear, how they respond. And we saw that for many, many years. And in fact, we're still seeing it to this day. I mean, I saw people a few times this week outside with masks on, walking around or driving in their car. And it's just like, you got to be fucking kidding me. What are you doing?
Yeah, it is human beings can become very, very dangerous and also very, very controllable and predictable, really, above all. When fear becomes the actual contagion, because that's really what I saw. That was really what shocked me the most. I was like, what happened? And then it was almost more of a kind of, I don't know how to say it, shitty feeling. I'll just say, like being in the area that I was and being like, am I the only one seeing this shit? Like, what is going on? But it was really, really difficult being in certain parts of the country if you didn't buy into that, because people would then turn around and literally wish death on you. And it would get it was very Lord of the Flies. I'll put it that way. But it was crazy. I'm like, am I crazy? Like, what is going on? So I'm glad I got myself out of there, but it took a minute, you know what I mean? Like that whole, all the lockdown measures and shit, it put everybody out of work. It, destroyed the housing. Like I was without housing for a time period. It was very, very hard to survive financially because nobody was working. I wasn't getting a check for not working either. So I wound up being a Grubhub driver for about 2 years, but it was difficult. But I think the thing was it was unbelievable to me that people would turn against their own flesh and blood and their own, kin because the TV said so. Like I that blew my mind. It really
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. You may have already covered it, but I was going to ask you if you could cite what the worst part of the pandemic was. You may have already touched on that. I'm not sure if you've got something to add to that.
The worst. God, that's watching a genocide take place in real time via pharmaceutical experiment. And if you say anything, you're essentially wiped off. You're denied a job, you're denied housing, you're exiled from your community, you're certainly wiped out of all the public talking spaces, aka the internet. Like that's when I definitely started dealing with censorship on a very, very extreme level. I still deal with it today. That's why you can find me on Substack, because it's, like as far as publishing, but the fuck am I going to say on a social media app? You know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous. Watching that happen and not being able to stop it. Like I've had friends die from that shot. And so, I'm not like, I'm not even sure how to even begin to unpack it, because there's so much pain and there's so much rage there, for not being able to have stopped that. So there's that. And then I guess just watching everything you once knew just collapse and disappear overnight. I would say, definitely living in the chaos of people, losing their minds, a lot of violence in the area that I was in when that went down. I saw a lot of things that might be disturbing to some people if I repeat, so I won't, but just watching the total deterioration of everything and everyone around me, and just knowing like this is never gonna, go back to whatever we were doing, and in some ways, that's fine. Like we're all alchemists in our own right. So we're going to take that and we're going to use it to our highest good and to our highest evolution, where I'm not going to dwell on that. We're going to use what we're given, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, and we're still going to continue with the horizon. But that was devastating, to just watch everything go away. I know some people in other parts of the country where it was not, they did not have that experience. But if you were in a liberal bubble, like I was on the West Coast in both California and Oregon, it was nuts. It was absolutely nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. It leaves you feeling like so terrible, quite honestly. That's one thing that people really need, is the physical connection between other human beings. As much as people say, hey, people suck and I just want to get away and be by myself, that's like the worst thing you can do to a person, is physically isolate them. That's why they have solitary confinement.
Yeah, that's why it's a punishment, even in prison. Yep.
That's a huge punishment, man, to be alone. I mean, some people tend to cope with it and they can deal with it, but that's not one's innate desire. We all have a desire to be loved and to be around other people and to be a part of something that's not just ourselves. So that whole thing really caused a lot of people a lot of stress and turmoil, for sure. What would you say is the best part of the best thing to come out of the pandemic?
The best thing to come out of it. It's a really good question, actually. I think a lot of that still remains to be seen. However, I think it was so disruptive that anytime there is collapse or destruction or death in any form, that is the most potent opportunity for transformation and for rebirth. So who, like kind of like what we were saying before we went live, like I am witnessing this in real time. There is a massive surge of people coming together that are in the solution, that are freedom minded, that are very much also spiritually centered in wanting to face the things that have kept them, they're a prisoner inside their own body for so long, and wanting to connect and understanding, like, we have been separated for too long. We've been played against each other for too long. We've placed importance on things in life that are not important. And sometimes it takes everything, ending, and a lot of disruption and chaos to really realize what's important in life. Death is an excellent teacher if you want to know what's really important in life, which, what I have discovered is the only thing that matters is love. Everything else is noise at the end of the day. But I think the resurgence in freedom-minded people and in people that are going to kind of answer whatever call that they kind of came here for, whatever their spirit came here for. I'm seeing a lot of that in people that I know, and I'm also witnessing it in myself. But I think when it comes to what's the best thing to have come from that, I think more will be revealed. I don't think we've seen that quite yet. But that's my best answer.
Yeah, I would like to expound upon that. I think for myself, the best thing that has come out of the pandemic is everything that I'm doing now.
Mm.
Everything that I'm doing now is a result of what they did, because I was on a much different path. Even though I've homesteaded for 20 years or whatever, I was on a different path. I was kind of in that retirement mode. I was traveling in my motorhome, just living the dream as a retired guy with me and my wife, and just doing our thing. And then they did what they did, and it caused me to do what now I'm doing. And that's having this YouTube channel. That's going to these festivals and meeting people like you. We never would have met if
Mm-mm.
if 2020 didn't happen. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, that's actually a
And so,
great point. Yeah,
and
because
so,
everybody I've met since then, I would not have met if that wouldn't have happened, and I wouldn't trade the people I've met since then for the world. I really
yeah,
wouldn't, nor the experiences.
right.
So
And
yeah.
that's the silver lining that I can see in all of this, is that everything that they've done to cause this to happen, their response to this is my response, is what I'm doing every day when I get up. And everything that I think about now is in response to what they did. So that's the most positive thing that I can spin on all of this, because as we've probably can all agree upon, a lot of what went on there was a lot of wrong, but we have to be able to take the good from that. And like I say, all the relationships that I've been able to get established from this point forward, and everything that I'm doing every day is a result of what they did. And so that's the best thing to have come out of it for me.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be, where I'm at in the country. I wouldn't have moved as much as I would have. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's, I like where I'm at in life today. I like the adventure. I like the person that I am and the person that I'm becoming more and more of each day. And I wouldn't have done any of the things that I've done to be here. So yeah, so you're right. I mean, that was a huge, huge turning point for everyone. How people dealt with it is up to them. But yeah, that's a good thing to think about, though, because it's very easy to think about like the bad, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But it's kind of it's interesting to think about, I mean, Self-Reliance Festival. I mean, we would have never met there. Even like Float Fest when I was out there in Texas. Getting to train at Tactical Response, getting to be out at SOE, like all that kind of stuff, that never would have happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hugely changed my life, and also brought me into circles that have taught me how to be a much more empowered individual on this planet, and member of a community as well. So yeah, those are all very good points.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess all we can do is prepare for the next one, because there will be undoubtedly some other catastrophe or thing that's coming our way, and that's the whole point of this thing. And as a prepper, I guess we're always anticipating what the next greatest threat is. That's how preppers' minds work. It's either this or it's that, or there's something on the horizon. And what's that next greatest threat for you? Or I guess to say it another way, what has you the most concerned?
This is gonna sound very weird. I've lost a lot of my concern. I mean, I have a pulse and an eye on things, whether I want to or not at this point. I mean, it's even if I didn't want to hear about it, I'm going to hear about it. The thing that used to scare me the most, like especially when I first got into preparedness, because I would really look at my vulnerabilities. The thing that scared me the most was grid down scenarios. And I think what we first started talking about actually sort of ties into this. People do not realize how much their very survival is reliant on the grid not going down, like whether it's comms, whether it's water, gas, transport, being able to move, food, like literally everything is running off of that. So grid down scenarios were something that would scare me the most. And I think that that's probable for many, many reasons. And there's a lot of other things too. You know what I mean? Like I'm aware of like, you know, what they say, what they dangle, what, you know, what kind of tabletop shit they're doing, you know. I have a pretty decent idea of like what's on the bingo card. And I'm also well aware they could pull some wild shit out of nowhere as well. The reason why, because when I first got into preparedness, I was very, 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 which I think probably everybody is when they first get into it, but I was very, very nervous. Kind of always, you know, listening and looking out and kind of always anticipating and bracing. And I realized, and that's actually a tactic of war, is to keep your enemy always in a state of anticipation because it weakens them. So like they wind up killing themselves for you. Or like by the time you get to them to do whatever you want to do, it's not even a fight because they've worn their bodies and minds and spirits down to such a degree with chronic stress that there's just nothing left. And I saw that happening to myself as well. So I've had to learn how to balance, you know, preparedness and not being like a delusional idiot who's not paying attention versus, but like still remembering to live my life. Yes, tactical response and SOE. Yes, I love that. I'm guessing that's you are attack response alumni. I just saw that comment. And for me, the spiritual path that I personally choose and personally practice helps me a lot, just in the sense that it gives me a place within myself, certainly not to hide, but it gives me an ability to trust on something that no matter what I come up against or have to face, I am going to be able to rise to that occasion. And if I don't and shit hits the fan or whatever and I don't, you know, I'll go out with a bang for sure, but like so be it, you know what I mean? Cuz death doesn't scare me easy either. Like death to me is death is mercy. You know, it takes a lot of courage to choose to live, to truly live. That's hard. Death doesn't scare me anymore. But that's kind of where I'm at is I would not be surprised by anything at all. And of course, no, they're not done with them. You know what I'm saying? But I guess I'm starting to direct more energy on, okay, they have their script and it's pretty obvious what it is because they disclose it because they try to get around the natural law of cause and effect via revelation of the method. So what's our script? You know, because I think it can be a downfall if we give that shit too much power because it almost helps them manifest their agenda because we're like giving so much of our energy to it. So I guess I'm not super concerned. If I had to pick a concern, my concern would be that they're at the lack of people that are aware still. Like that if I had to pick anything, it would just be like, holy shit, like we really need to all have our shit together a lot more. Like, come on, you guys, what are we doing?
Mhm.
So if I had to pick a concern, it'd probably be that. I don't know. But what about you?
I think that there's two things that have me concerned. And again, not to the extent that it's going to derail the things that I'm doing around here. And it's not anything that I'm losing sleep over. It's just something that I've got my eyes on that I think or I anticipate is going to be coming our way. Because there's nothing that any of us can do to stop any of this. The only thing we can do is react to it in a positive way that puts ourselves in a more advantageous position than we were the day before. And so, you know, when I'm looking at the things that they have coming our way, where I see our vulnerabilities. And I think that this is, in my opinion, without question, something that's going to happen. And that's the rise of artificial intelligence and how that's going to have just a dramatic impact on everything in society. I think that that's really going to alter things in a way that we can't even like fathom at this point. Jobs are going to be lost. That's going to have a ripple effect on people's ability to do things. You're going to have more unemployed people. I mean, it's just exponential. There's going to be a replacement of humanity with artificial intelligence. And
yeah, well, I mean, we're already seeing it. I mean, like with the lack of amount of people that there are, like go into a hospital, you know what I mean? Find out how many nurses are in the ER when you need something, you know what I mean? It's like, it's really, really dystopian. But yeah, I think AI, I am not a supporter or a fan of that at all.
But see, here's the thing. It's coming. There's nothing that we can do about it. In fact, I almost found it a little bit funny and I was kind of like actually feeling a little bit like, okay, fuckers, you got yours now. Now you're out there crying because they're replacing all the screenwriters and all these Hollywood actors were all striking and all pissed off because they're using AI to write their scripts and they're writing all this other stuff. I got no sympathy for them people. They can go pack sand. They're going to come for a lot of people's jobs. What makes you special? What about the guy flipping burgers at McDonald's? They're going to have it's going to be all automated. Mm-hmm. There's nothing you can do to stop it. So, I mean, there's going to be truckers losing their jobs. They're going to have trucks are going to be delivering shit. They're going to have drones bringing things to your house. This is all on the horizon, and it's nothing that we're going to do to stop it. It's a concern of mine. The other concern that I would have is the monetary system. I think that that's something that they're actually trying to bring down so that they can have this restructuring with their CBDC and all
yeah,
that.
100%. 100%.
I mean, I don't think there's too many people that are disputing that. They've already rolled out their Fed coin or whatever it is. And, that's just a matter of time. It's all ones and zeros. And you're all going to be a part of this great reset that they're planning. So I think the only thing that we can do is just react to what we know is coming and try to put ourselves in a better position so that we can leave something possibly for the people that are going to come after us, our descendants.
Yes. Yeah, that is. I actually wrote something on Substack about that. I titled it An Erased Civilization. And it was like disguised as sci-fi, but it really wasn't though. Like, and people on Substack, at least the ones that I'm connected to, they're all very, very freedom-minded and in the know. Because like I said, you can say and share whatever kind of information you want. Like no one's getting banned off of that, so it's like probably the last place on the internet where that's a thing for now. But I remember writing a piece and I called it An Erased Civilization because I was like, I guess this is back to the phones, but I was like, what would happen if, like humans in the future came and, everything was, they went looking for the ruins of who we were. And all they found was all these little rectangles with like a little apple with a bite taken out of it. Just like these, like, what are we leaving behind? Just like our phones? Like, what the hell are we doing? But yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. Those things, I don't see a way to dodge them. But I do think as far as being proactive, I mean, that's the whole point of like, of communities and of going to things like Self-Reliance Festival, and a lot of other things like that is we can do our best to, build our own way, our own lives, our own communities. You know what I mean? We can, and whatever is going on in the population dense areas is going to go on, which is why I have progressively been getting further and further and further away from them. But yeah, that part actually is I think about that. Actually, I'm just like, what's gonna, because it's all tied to, what you say, your social credit score, all that shit. And they can I'm actually in the middle of making a song about that exact topic. It's called Algorithm Ghetto, but it talks about how, like, if you're guilty of wrong think, all these things can happen to you, including like them just freezing your bank, like just because you had the wrong thought. So yeah, it is actually highly dystopian. sometimes I wonder if I've just been exposed to it for so long and aware of it for so long that I'm like, it almost like doesn't shock me anymore.
Right.
But
I, you know,
I just look for ways that I can, if there's a way I can try to, shield myself or get around it, I will. And if not, then it's like, well, maybe if all out chaos breaks out, maybe that's what needs to happen. I don't know.
yeah, I try to maintain some balance with regard to the news intake, and um, uh, it's really leaves you a bit like feeling better when you can just pull back from it, and you don't know
Hmm.
what's going on. But I think we're very much at a consequential time in our society. There's so much that's not going right. And with the amount of people that have flooded across the border and just all of everything's so fragile, from our monetary system to just people's general like feeling about things. It could kick off at any moment. And I'm not the type of person that thinks, oh, things are going to jump off tomorrow, but it's giving me a little bit more cause for concern of not just saying, oh, fuck it, I don't want to know what's going on in the news. I'll just, not pay attention. So I try to keep my feelers out there for the things that are happening that might be consequential so that you can react to them. Because if you don't know anything about anything, next thing you know, it's something's happened and, oh shit, I didn't know anything about that. I wish I'd have known a day earlier. That would have been helpful. So I am just trying to pay a little bit more attention now that we're in election year, because things are they're going to be fucking wacky. Let's just say there's going to be some shenanigans afoot.
Shenanigans. Yeah. No,
Shenanigans.
yeah. As always. Yeah. Yeah. There is. And then, I don't know. I mean, where I've been trying to devote a lot of my energy when it comes to preparedness, has been in the realm of the spirit, just because, and this kind of talks about, it was a conversation I had when I was at a meeting of like minds, let's say in East Tennessee recently. And we were all kind of talking about, community building or like exiting and, parallel economies, parallel societies, whatever. And the topic of, how do you get everybody on board? Like, how do you cooperate? Like the basic fundamental root of like, there's a problem with human, like interpersonal and interpersonal relationships. Like, what the hell do we do about that? Because you could have the best system and the best ideas, but it's only going to manifest to the highest level of consciousness that group of people is at. And if people are still like so hypnotized by or intoxicated with, divide and conquer stuff, or just so hyper reactive and so out of touch and desensitized toward one another, like no empathy, shit's not going to work. So we kind of came to the conclusion, like, holy shit, like, as I do believe that we are due for a massive revolution, but I do think it's going to be one that starts in the realm of the spirit first and then moves forward, because that's where all this shit is. And also it's like the only thing that they really can't take from us too. They can take my body, they can take my resources, they can take my freedom. If they want to, they can just throw me in a box and just starve me out. You know what I mean? But they can't take that. And that might sound crazy to some people, but I just think that if we're going to get out of this, we have to do it together. We are all that we have, and we're going to have to learn how to live and work in harmony with each other in order to make anything change. And that's going to require us to do a lot of the inner work first, because people are real quick to want to go to like screaming about a conflict, thousands of miles away, before they want to even address the fire underneath their own roof and in their own home. So I do think that a different perception and a different mind state is hugely called for in moving forward.
Yeah. Building community, it's something that's actually pretty hard. And I think that anybody who's sought to build a community would attest to that. I think that people are both extremely complicated and very simple at the same time. And there's like two things that motivate people universally. And one is fear, and the other is acting in their own self-interest. And what's in your, I guess, opinion, what would be the best way to approach building a community? Because it's easy to get like-minded people together, but what does that actually fucking mean? You know, we are like-minded, but are we all going to be rowing in the same direction? And I think that's what is needed in a community, because you can assemble a bunch of people that kind of have a rough understanding of what we all support. But when you start talking about community, what does that community actually stand for? What does it mean to be a member of that community? I think that's the first thing that one needs to ask. You know, what does it mean for me to be a member of this? And what is the expectation for all of us within the community? That way there can be kind of a common understanding of like, hey, this is what it means to be doing this. And then we can move forward in doing that. And I think the other thing that will sort that out is through time and essentially pressure. You know, you need to spend time with people, because everybody's going to put on their best foot forward when you first meet them. But through time, you're going to get to see what their true colors are. And so it's a very interesting dynamic, building community. And somebody who's spoken a lot about that is Tag, of course, you know, from Life Done Free. And he's got a pretty good little video series that I actually got introduced to Tag by watching that. And I watched it several times because it was interesting to me, talking about the different layers and levels of building a community, and sitting down talking to him and hearing how he's been in many different groups and some of them have failed because of certain things. And that's all that it takes, is people not having an understanding initially what you're getting together to accomplish. You know, it's a difficult thing. It's something that we're working on in our local area, is having, you know, community. But it's something that a lot of people want. But what does that actually mean? You know?
Yeah, well, the instinct of, you know, to behave in a very self-serving or fear motivated or self-centered way. I mean, that is just as much. That's often, even though addiction is as a coping and survival mechanism, that's at the root of all addiction. And you know, sliding scale, but like all people do suffer from that. And as far as what it's going to take, I mean, you brought up something good. Like, do people even know why they are there? Because we're so disconnected from actual in real life community living, and that being there for a reason of our survival, not just like, oh, hey, hi, let's go do something sometime. Like, no, this is like actual survival. You know, there has to be there has to be like a level of responsibility that I think has been void in many people, because you have to have personal responsibility, but you also have to understand, like, you have to understand the interconnectedness of all things. You have a responsibility to your community too, like you do. And doing nothing is almost worse than fucking shit up, honestly. Or they're the same, but you know what I mean? But it's just as harmful. People think that, oh, if I just don't do anything, I'm not hurting anybody. Yes, you are. You're robbing everybody of what you came here to do, and you're just, what are you doing? Watching everybody burn, basically, and just having, you know, sitting there in apathy. So yeah, when it does come to the community, I think you know, I don't know how to get to this point. Again, it just keeps bringing me back to there needs to be spiritual development. And when I say that, I am not telling anybody what path to take. I am not talking about any particular, I'm not even talking about religion. I'm talking about like we have to elevate and evolve our own psyches and our own spirits in a manner where we can have reverence for one another, as opposed to just viewing people as, what can I get out of you, or a means to an end, or white noise, or, oh, another NPC, like just no connection. There's got to be reverence to the community, and a responsibility toward it. And I don't mean that in some like weird, creepy, like communistic way. I just mean like, understand the interconnectedness of all things. Like, whatever you put out, it like affects everyone, even if that is nothing. Like, there is nothing that any of us do or don't do that doesn't in some way affect the greater whole. So it's I don't know, man.
Yeah,
That's tough.
it's very tough. Building community is very tough because what you're going to have is, obviously the Pareto principle is something that a lot of people know where, 20% of the people are going to wind up doing 80% of the work. And that shit will chop people's hides.
Mm-hmm.
So what winds up happening is you wind up disassociating from those members of the group. Essentially, they'll self-weed themselves out. And that's kind of how it should be. But in order for something to work, you have to have people that are having an understanding, first of all, of why are you there? What is this? What's the purpose of this? And what's kind of an expectation about this assemblage of people? Is it just so that we can get together and hang out, or are we actually working towards something? And so it's something that takes a lot of work, and I think that most people that have been in groups and tried to put groups together will kind of attest to. And then there's always the sovereignty issue, which Tag has brought up. People need to maintain their sovereignty because sometimes there's the thought that we're going to get into this community and we're going to all live together. Well, in reality, how the fuck is that going to work, man? If we can't figure that shit out now in peace times, how's that going to work when things are not peace times?
Oh, it's not.
Right?
It's not.
You're just kidding yourself to think you're going to get a bunch of alpha dudes with their families all living on the same piece of property, growing shit in a garden. It's just like, that's just fanciful bullshit. I guess if it ever happened and you needed to do that, I guess you'd have to figure it out. But the reality is that people can't even discuss that in civil times and come up with an agreement on how that's going to work. You see what I'm saying? It's just like,
I do.
Yeah,
I absolutely do. That's
Yeah.
why I keep going back to, okay, ground zero, ground zero, ground zero, because I don't think anybody's state of mind or level of consciousness is even where it needs to be to see the way out or to see a solution. That's why we keep going in circles with a lot of this shit. But
Right.
as far as what I see, I don't know. I mean, I know that there's a need for human beings that are consistent, that are people of principle, that have their own inner constitution, that know exactly what it is, that know exactly who they are, that are honest and forthcoming and transparent with their intent, and that are willing to, also with boundaries as well, like you said, because you don't want to be in that situation where you've got 20% of the people carrying the other 80, because that will not work. Especially if it's like a shit hit the fan scenario. It won't work at all. So it does take a lot of these things that I think have over time been castrated out of people via various forms and seemingly endless forms of programming and propaganda and cultural influences and indoctrination and whatever. And so it's like, okay, like we see that that's happening. So like, do people want to go back to sleep and keep playing the same bullshit game until everything blows up in their face and things get real bad? Because some of us did see in 2020 what it really looks like, even if it is your microcosm of your neighborhood, for everything to be on fire and everything to be nuts and people shooting and killing each other in the streets and people jumping out of their apartments to kill themselves because they couldn't handle the isolation of coming home and seeing pools of blood and going, okay, whose body? Because it was that nuts for some of us. And a lot of people have no idea that that can happen here in that quick, no warning, none. And nobody is coming to save you. Like you're on your own. So like,
Right.
I mean, and that was, those were microcosm areas where it was actually that bad.
Right.
And whatever would come next, I would imagine would be more severe, because look at all these years of compression and agitation and increased decline in society, so I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one, and I keep finding myself just needing to go back to my own self to get the clarity, like from a different place other than the thinking mind that can just find out what's wrong, but has such a hard time finding out, well, what's right if we've never seen it. So that's kind of why I'm thinking like we need our perspective to be on a higher thought plane, if you will. That's just my 2 cents on that. But I mean, I'm with you. Like we definitely need it. and a web of interdependence as well. Because of course, no, we're not all going to live under the same roof, but I have met people that do live off grid and in communities, and I see the way that they do it, and they have their system. And those communities have been a long time in the making, but I have seen some of them be very successful. So I know it's possible.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's no there's no absolute way to do it. And it really just comes down to what the group itself has as an expectation for the group, and how committed the people are within that group to see it be successful. You know, you can write your own roadmap for success on this. Every group can be entirely different. Some can live in their own little areas and they all provide certain things within the group, and that just works for that group. Other groups might be more intentional, where they're all living on the same piece of property. There could be a myriad of different ways that this can happen. But again, I think it boils down to, you got to know what the people within that group have as an expectation for the group. First off, you got to know where you're going. And then you also have to know, through time and pressure, what these people are going to be like. Because again, everybody looks great at first blush, but when you get a chance to spend time with people, and over time you get to see their behaviors and their attitudes and their different things, that's how you're going to flesh this shit out. You know, but it takes work and it takes time. And, you know, there's a lot of resources out there. I know you spoke about freedom cells. That's a place where people are going to, you know, open the door. That's basically, you're just opening the door to having a conversation with people, so that you can, hey, do we want to take this further than the first meeting? Do we want to pursue this on a higher level? And I think that's where these types of organizations are really good. But in order to be successful, I think at any community building, it's just going to take time. Nothing of any substance is ever built like overnight. Everything of any merit takes time. And, you know, I know a lot of people want shit to happen now, and, you know, and that's just an innate, like, that's an innate human desire. We want it now, you know, and that's just one of those things that takes a lot of time, you know?
Yeah, that's actually a very good thing for me to even hear now, because patience is not my strong suit, and I tend to create some of the most damage in my life when I try to force things to move faster than is their own rate. You know what I mean? For lack of I'm not really quite sure how to explain that, but yeah, it is a process, and it does take discipline, consistency, and us having to kind of retrain ourselves toward delayed gratification and patience, and kind of being able to see things like bigger picture versus like now, or yesterday. You know what I mean? Because I can fall into that kind of thinking very easily, and I will wind myself up into a lunatic who is useful to absolutely no one, and usually a problem for at least a lot of people. So
yeah, you know, it's something that I've had to learn too, because I do have a kind of an impulsive personality. You know, especially when I was younger, I was very impulsive. But what I've learned over time is that, again, and this is something that my dad told me that he didn't come up with, because a lot of people have said this. He just said Rome wasn't built in a day. And when he said that to me, I was just like, huh, okay. And I was a young buck at that point, right? And I always kept that with me. And then when I was younger in my career, I looked out and said, man, 30 years, that's a long time from now. Man, that's a big ass, like, all the things that wow, that's a long time from now. And then next thing you know, you look around after you keep your nose down and you keep chipping away at it a little bit at a time. And then you're there and you're like, huh, wow, now I've kind of got a few things, acquired, which I didn't have when I was 18. Now I'm in a much different position, and it just takes time. If you're diligent and you're persistent at the things you're doing, you know, every day I'm doing something around here, and it sometimes doesn't feel like I'm doing much. But then I look back on the week and I'm fucking like, man, I got a lot of shit done. I got that done and that done and that done. And then another year goes by and you just look around and you go, man, there's more shit around here that I've gotten done that I haven't. And that's the whole point of the process. You know, I talk a lot about that on this particular live stream, that's kind of my thing. I say is, be better tomorrow than you were today, because there's so much truth in that. If you just take one thing and try to get that one thing that's important to you accomplished, man, next thing you know, you're going to have the shit you need, and you're going to be sitting back looking and going, man, I did that,
Mm-hmm. It's very, very true. It is. And it will soon. Then this might even scare some people. It scares me, actually. I actually was dealing with some of that fear today, but it might surprise people just how powerful they actually are. And a lot of the times the power lies in not the giant stuff, but like the repeated smaller stuff, or like subtleties even, obviously depending on the situation and what we're talking about. But we are really a lot more powerful than we think, like by far, to the point where when you start seeing like the results of your repeated efforts start to really come to fruition, to where you're like, you don't even recognize it. You haven't lived like that before, and it can almost like throw you off because you haven't seen it. But yes, it'll surprise people how powerful all of us are, really.
Yeah. Yeah. That's certainly very true. And Skane's girl says, you got to crawl before you walk. You got to walk before you run. That's what my dad always told me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. There's nothing but truth right there.
It is truth.
Nothing but truth. And you got somebody here saying, how do?
Oh, Ronan. I know who that is. Oh, my friend. Hello.
Right on. Well, welcome. Welcome. I'm glad to have Tess on tonight.
That's so awesome. That's another friend from Self-Reliance Festival.
Oh, right on.
You guys might have met. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think if he was at the one that I met you at. I'm not sure. I know that I met him at the first one that I went to.
Right.
But yes, another Self-Reliance Festival friend.
Right on. And Skane says, absolutely identify with you when I force a situation rather than trusting that I will be led into the right direction. It never seems to work out.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's real. That's very, very real. And something I have to remind myself of constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on, Dawn. Thanks for being here, man. Hey, so talking about the news, I don't watch mainstream news. I do get my information off of the internet. And let me ask you, where do you go to stay informed?
Shoot. I don't even have to. Like, it's just at this point, based on who I know, it will get to me immediately. Also, I would say the two places would be Substack for sure, because as I said, it is not censored. So a lot of stuff comes through the pipe and fast. And people are also not idiots. So like, they're not going to be like writing about or resharing stuff that's fluff and distractive. But you will find very, very thorough and well-written research pieces there, if that's what you're into. And it's, you could go on forever about it, but there's a lot of, the discourse there is not censored. I shouldn't be saying that because like watch it happens next month, but as of right now, it is not. I like what Don said. Yeah. So as far as like what's going on, I always hear about it anyway. Or like, you'll kind of see it like get brought up on Substack, or like maybe I'm scrolling through YouTube or whatever, and like, Bear Independent. I'm subscribed to his channel, and I might see something that like, because he keeps a pulse on things. And he tends to talk about things very rationally. Like he says a lot in a lot of his videos, like, I am not giving any of you permission to freak out, because that's just not helpful. You know what I mean? But just certain, if I really want to do a deep dive, I know where to go. You know what I mean? But I'll do that myself. But as far as like, is there one hub that I'm consistently going to for it? No, not at this point.
Right.
Because I think whether it's algorithmically or just like via connection, it comes down the pipe regardless. And also I see it, I can see it also happening, and depending on what it is. But yeah, it's it winds up getting to me, even if I didn't want it to. It always does.
Yeah, same. And that's when I decide to tune out from the news, when I'm just like, yeah, I'm over it. I'm not going to watch anything. Um, it just gets to you. Like I say, if it's important, somebody's going to let you know that something
Hmm.
important is happening, somebody you're connected with. And that's a really good way to at least get a tip off so that you can do some further investigation. But I actually have been trying to keep my my pulse, or trying to keep my ear to the grindstone, so to speak, with regard to the news. And I where I go is, it's pretty lame, but I go to TikTok. And
Really?
oh yeah, TikTok loves feeding you all the bullshit that's going on around the country, And once you click on something, then they're going to feed you more of that.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, and I go there just for entertainment, and then if I see something that's worthy, I will do further investigation to see if there's any validity to it, because there's a lot of bullshit out there. But yeah, I being that it's an election year, it's something that hasn't pissed me off to the point where I've decided to just pull back from it. But I've been keeping my pulse on what's happening in the news, and that's really it. Because I don't trust mainstream sources, quite honestly. I think that all of it's opinion based, and you have to try to discern what of it is true. And that's part of the problem, is that we've got so many opinionated sources from both sides that are giving you partial truths, and then you have to try to figure out what's real and what's not. And now that we've introduced artificial intelligence and the ability to do deep fakes and all this other shit that's coming down, that it just causes people to have further distrust in the things that they're seeing and hearing. But I actually think we're kind of in a really interesting time right now. I don't know how much longer it's going to last. I think that there's so many voices that are out there right now spreading the news. And for the authoritarian, that's a real problem. Everybody and their brother has a podcast, and they're espousing their views on certain issues, and they're informing you about what's happening, giving you their take on breaking news. And I think that we're kind of at the wild, wild west of that right now. We're seeing a lot, everybody and their brother's got a podcast. And I think they're going to clamp down on this shit at some point. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but yeah, what would you say on that?
In regards to even more censorship, you mean?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Disinformation. What we're speaking on tonight is probably disinformation to some.
it is. I mean, I'm surprised. Yeah, because I mean, I've received strikes on YouTube for conversations exactly like this. As far as what we're gonna, yeah, no, I mean, it's that's why I think that we should, as far as, again, using it as a tool, use it. And I've had these conversations with people that I've met through Substack, actually, is like, we need to start, we need to like organize meetups, like find out like where we are located, like regionally. And like, we kind of started finding out, okay, there's a lot of us in the Southeast, there's a lot of us in Florida, there's a lot of us on the East Coast. So like, let's actually get this off the internet. Because at some point it will no longer be a place where you can say anything, especially with the surgence of the CBDC and people's social credit scores being tied to that. It's like, if people know that they're not going to be able to buy food to feed their children if they're guilty of what wrong think, do you think people are going to still be having those podcasts? Like most of them will not. And it might get shut down altogether. I don't know. It's when the big news story breaks, looks everywhere else they had nothing. Yeah, that's very true as well. Yeah, so I think that the plan of continuing the chokehold on public discourse or dissent, I don't see that stopping at all. No, I don't.
Yeah.
If anything, I think when it happens, it's allowed, because it's not like they don't know. Like, everything is monitored. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
sure.
These are all just data harvesting systems. So this is not us getting one over on anybody. Like, it's
No.
just, we should just use it intelligently while we have it, because there very well may come a time when this type of communication is not possible.
Oh yeah. That was my overarching point. I just think that, we have so much opportunity right now to speak freely and get information from alternative sources. But, years and years ago, it was just the big three networks. And that's what people accepted as the truth. Obviously it was politically biased, but we didn't know any better at the time because that was the news and that was the truth. And then, other things came out. CNN was the first cable news network that came out, I think in the 90s or something, maybe late 80s. And at that time, it was actually reporting and it was giving you kind of decent news about what was happening internationally. And then more started coming in. And then they figured out, hey, we can get this right-wing channel, Fox, and then we can get our left-wing channels. And that's, again, going back to what you were saying, it's just all in an effort to drive us apart. All that is just to keep 350 million people divided and screaming at each other across the fucking dinner table at Thanksgiving. That's what it's designed to do, because that weakens us and gives them power. And so now, again, you've got people that are voicing their opinion, as are we, on this internet. And I think that at some point they're going to realize, hey, you know what? Yeah, we're not okay with that. We're gonna isolate it because what they're talking about is disinformation. It's misinformation and all of that sort of stuff. And when that happens, it happens. If this channel fucking vaporizes tomorrow, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm doing this shit because it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not paying my bills with YouTube, and so I'm going to speak my mind for as long as I have the ability to speak my mind. But I just find it, very interesting, the time in history that we're witnessing right now, because like I say, it is moving fast, man. I mean, there's going to be some changes in the next 5 years that I think is going to dwarf like the last 50 years of shit from a technological standpoint. We're living in the fourth industrial revolution right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where they're merging the digital age, the third industrial revolution, with now the fourth in the physical. There's going to be all kinds of new technologies that are coming out. And again, when you have a guy like Elon Musk saying, I don't know how this is going to play out. This might not end well. Fucking guy like that saying something like that, it kind of gives me a little bit of cause, like, why would he say something like that? He doesn't even know. So it's just, again, I think we're in very interesting times. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to be a part of, I suppose, until it's not fun. But all we can do is to try to, build ourselves up better and react to what they got coming, because they got shit coming. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And yeah, there have been people speaking out about this for a long time. What people kind of, somebody asked an interesting question. If you have people who care about you and keep you informed about major disturbances in the forest, I love that. Isn't that a form of community? Absolutely. Yes, it actually is. 100%. Are they all, in my physical vicinity? No. Some of them are, one in particular I'm thinking of, which would be my uncle, who is awesome. But a lot of us are spread out. I think that in scenarios that we're talking about, when shit does hit the fan, those are times when you do need people to be closer to you.
Yeah.
So I forgot what I was going on about. I'm sorry. I'm on a later time zone, so I'm like a little bit tired. But what the hell was I even talking about? Oh yeah, you were talking about the AI stuff. Yeah. I mean, that's been disclosed as like a massive problem for a while, for sure. But no one's listening. So we'll see what happens, because like you said, there's the things that we can do, which is like decide what our response will be.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the other side of that, where can we perfectly predict it? No, we can't.
No.
So what can we do? So it is a dance between becoming, being aware of your surroundings, and, you know, like preparing accordingly, but also still focusing on, okay, like how do I get further and further away from a narrative that I never wrote and further towards one that I or we did. So that's kind of my hope for everybody, for all who wants it. You know, I'm a big fan of free will and natural law and sovereignty. So for all who want it, because there's going to be people that don't. There's going to be people that want to stay back in the smart cities, aka open air prisons, kill houses. People are going to want that shit. It's going to be too scary to go anywhere else for them. So, and that's okay. That's their choice, you know?
Yeah. You know, here's something that, you know, I've thought about, and I don't know, let me know what your thoughts are, but you know, I think there's a pretty big target that's on anybody who's been conservative for many years, you know, dating back to the Tea Party. And, you know, that hate came from both sides. That wasn't just the left going after the Tea Party. It was sabotage from the establishment Republicans to go against a populist movement like the Tea Party. But anybody who's conservative for many years has been targeted in a sense, you know, called racist, called, you know, whatever, hate mongers, that they're, you know, affiliated with the Klan. And why, let me ask you, why do you think that there's so many liberals that remain silent when something is so seemingly obvious to everyone else? You know, there's a two-tiered justice system. There's, you know, what's good for thee is not good for me. And I don't know, why do you think so many liberals are just willing to sit on the sidelines and not say, hey, you know, that's kind of fucked up. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Maybe we shouldn't be targeting people in that way.
Because that is the blinding thing of ideology that brings me back to the Lord of the Flies, you know, analogy. But from what I have seen, and this may be true in a lot of, depending on the person, right? But if somebody becomes too identified with ideology, it's problematic, because then you become like this Pavlovian dog, you know, from what I have seen dealing with that fucking mess, that hysteria mob, they don't care about anything that the TV does not tell them to, but more so their team on the TV. And you know what, in some cases the same could be said for any side, you know what I'm saying? But as far as, but yeah, it is bullshit though. You know, that's a frustration I've had too, of like, well, so like this principle only applies to like your team, but like if it's happening to someone else, it's like you're just cheering it on, like what? So that's why I don't take any of the outrage or the cries for XYZ or the virtue signaling seriously, because it's not. If it's not for all, then it's not genuine. You're just jumping when it's trending, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a problem with ideology. And again, with the divide and conquer and the tribalism stuff, is that you stop viewing the other person as human. You just see, oh, conservative, or oh, liberal, or whatever, you know, fill in the blank, but you're not seeing that's another human being that you are innately connected to. And so it has a dehumanizing effect. So I don't even think they are aware that they do any of what they do is harmful. I think that a lot of what keeps that ideology going is the intoxication with feeling like you're always on the right side of history. You're always the right one. And that maybe the same could be said for any ideology when somebody gets too deep in it. But I don't even think that, I'll tell you this, I certainly never had received any apologies from all the people that, you know, wanted me to die because I wouldn't take the jab. You know what I'm saying? And those were people that like I had known forever, but because I didn't do what the news said, I was all of a sudden some lunatic extremist, and like I was having crazy shit said and done. You know, and I don't expect an apology, but no, they don't think they're wrong. They don't. And if they have a sneaking suspicion they do, can you imagine having to face that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I agree with you on that. I think there's certain people that do know, and there's probably a lot of them that don't really know because of what they've been programmed to believe, that the other side is evil, the other side is actually racist. And if they do these things, then, it's going to be good for the climate, or it'll be good for gender equality, or it'll be good for all of these different buzzwords that they've been indoctrinated to believe that, they're on the right side of things. And they look at the other side that doesn't agree with this as something that needs to be eradicated. But what they don't understand is that all they're doing is furthering the police state. And once the police state has ultimate control, their ass is going to be loaded up in a fucking boxcar too.
Yeah.
And shipped off to the chambers. You see what I'm saying? Because the people that they're aligning themselves with don't give jack shit about them. They don't care about illegal aliens. They don't care about blacks. They don't care about women's rights. They don't care about any of that shit. Only thing they care about is they care about their ability to retain power. And it's just interesting to me that liberals aren't smart enough to see that duplicity that's being perpetrated against the other side and realize that, maybe someday that could be me too. They're just, no, we're going to help support the police state. And then, like I say, once the police state has completed their mission entirely and taken people's guns and taken people's fucking rights and taken people's everything and got you on the system, so you're just ones and zeros and your credit score doesn't match up, guess what? Guess where they're going to be? They're going to go, maybe we should have thought about this and not just fully went along with it. But see, this is all part of the plan. Divide and conquer, right? Red versus blue, black versus white, Jew versus Christian. It's all fucking part of the plan. But so many people are not smart enough to even think outside the box. They think, oh, MSNBC said this, or they're rooting along with that, full well knowing that it's kind of not cool. And then what I say about that is those people should be lumped with the rest of them, like the politicians. I think the politicians are actually evil because they know what they're doing. I don't necessarily fault the people that are just stupid enough to go along with it because they're just being programmed. They don't really know. They don't have that intention in their heart. But the politicians on both sides know exactly what they're doing to this country and to its population, and they don't give two shits about it. That's a problem. Would you not agree?
I do agree. Absolutely. I fucking agree.
Sorry, I was ranting there, but that's just my perspective. I'm just
no,
sharing.
that's just, that's the thing that was coming up in my head when you were talking is all of this is and I'm sure this has been known about for a long time, but there's an old video of, I know his first name is Yuri. I'm trying to remember his last name, but he was a Russian KGB agent, and he gave a talk on it was a total breakdown on the mechanics of propaganda, but step by step. I think the talk was called How to Subvert a Nation. But it's 100 what's being done here and in a lot of places worldwide is 100% taken from that, to the T. I'm trying to remember the video. I know I have it saved. So what I can do for anybody interested, because it is a very worthwhile thing to watch, just so you kind of get a better idea of what's going on when things seem so chaotic and people ask how the hell could people act like this? It's broken down very clearly. So I'll find the video. I'll post it in the comment of this live afterwards. But that is a video, because I remember there was a few weeks ago. I remember talking to my uncle, and I remember just having so much anger, like my blood pressure went through the roof because I got onto social media for 30 seconds. But what I saw, I asked him, I was like, hey, am I just more sensitized to how insane this is because I'm not on social media, or are people becoming more insane? And he's like, probably both. But, and that's when he had told me about this video, and he's like, this is a part of it. This is what you're dealing with right now is the demoralization stage. Cause it was wearing on me. I'm like, it literally can make you get to the point where you lose your lightness about you and you just look at this chaos and you're like, these people aren't even worth saving. Like, I'm out. This guy, Bezmenov. Yes, Yuri Bezmenov. Yeah. Thank you. That is his last name. Yuri Alexandrovich Bezmenov. Yes. Thank you guys so much. I could not remember his last name. I knew it started with a B, but thank you guys. Yes. So they know how to submerge. Yes. 100%. Right. Okay. So they know. That's awesome. I love that. I love that so much. See, like even that right there gives me hope. It's like, okay, like that's amazing. That is amazing that multiple people just commented and they're like, this is his name. Yes. Like we've, that gives me a lot of faith because
I've heard of that guy.
If you pay attention to the optics, too much, it can have you thinking the worst. But so that's awesome that people just said that. But yeah, it's but of course, I mean, it's a lot of it is unconscious people, and a lot of it is malintent. Absolutely. And if I said how I really felt about some of these people, I'm not going to, because I've been to jail for less. Let's just say, like, there are things you can say. It was in California too. There are things that you like, if you say out loud, it's going to cause a bit of a problem and raise some alarms, but I think you could, potentially maybe understand what I'm saying. So like, I'm very familiar with watching that and just to your core. I don't even know. I don't think anger is even the right word. You know what I mean? But again, I just keep going back to, yes, it's happening for sure. But what the fuck are we going to do about it? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I just try to not, I try to use some civility when I'm looking at the other side. I try to understand them more so than just have a knee jerk reaction to like cut that person off and say, hey, fucking, whatever. They've got a perspective. I've got a perspective too. My issue is when they try to impose their perspective upon my way of thinking or my life. I don't mind if we have a conversation about our differences or whatever, and we can try to convince each other. That's fine. That's civil discourse. And I think we need a lot more of that in this country.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that right there is part of when I said, okay, so what the fuck are we going to do about it? I didn't mean that as in a way of like, we can't do anything. I meant like, what will we do? Cause like there are things we can do. Cause otherwise, you can just black pill yourself into oblivion by watching this stuff, you know what I mean? But and in some cases, depending on how it goes, in some cases, I actually have seen, I'm not saying it's common, but I have actually seen people like I've even seen this online where like people come at each other sideways, they get reactive, they blow up, and then they both have to like apologize. And then they realize like they actually agree under the surface, but like they were so reactive of, little dog whistle things that we've all been programmed to respond to, actually. That it causes, so it's that reactiveness, I think, and this also is modeled in I can speak for myself, but this is also completely modeled in one's personal life, in my personal life. When I'm in a state of reactiveness, that is going to cause a lot of problems, a lot. And so like, I have to do what I need to do to like maintain my own mental state. Otherwise I will burn the relationships in my life to the ground. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a very difficult thing to do, because we do all share the same energy field. So when the collective is very reactive, unless you live in a very isolated, remote area, to certain degrees, you're still going to feel that. But I don't really know where I was going with that, but I don't know. I don't know that like everybody can be saved. Everybody can be reasoned with. Everybody's going to all seem I don't think so, but I also don't think they have to either. Cause most revolutions, it starts with like 3%.
Yeah.
And then the wave comes not from people agreeing, but from people watching people doing it and seeing it work. And once they see the assurance, then people just kind of like follow.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's like we're only we only know what we know. And I know that personally myself, I've learned just a ton. Every day I'm a sponge for knowledge. I don't know everything. I'm constantly learning. I learn things that I didn't know because they didn't teach us these things in school. So you have to go out and seek this information on your own. And that's really what, separates and divides us apart, is just what we know and what we believe. We all have different beliefs. And that's the one thing they can't take from us, is our minds. That's the one thing that they can't change, is our ability to imagine. They can never steal that from you. They can try, and they can coerce you, but those are the things that we all have. And, somebody has a different point of view. That's cool. And like you said, there's people that can't be saved. They're too far gone, and you have to cut those people loose. But, we all have the ability to change, and maybe some people just haven't seen it yet because of their programming, because they haven't been shown, like, hey, this is kind of fucked up. They have never got to that point where they're like, this sucks. But as I was saying before, once they turn on them, then they're going to go, hey, this is kind of not all right. Now that the conservatives, they've taken care of them, they're coming for us too. Maybe they just haven't got the message yet. And I hope more people decide to wake up. But like I say, I'm trying to be empathetic to those people that are just going with what they know, because that's really all that we are all doing, is just going with what we know. We don't all have it figured out, because most of us are just going on what we've either read or heard somebody else tell us through the news. You don't really know what the fuck happened unless you were actually there. In reality, if you're getting it secondhand, it's coming through some other form of media to get to you, either in print. Somebody wrote that shit, and now you're reading it and going, oh yeah, this is the way it happened. How the fuck do you know? You weren't there. You're going based on, it's secondhand knowledge. Just like what you saw on the news is propaganda as well, because that's what they wanted you to see. All that shit that came back from Vietnam, all that footage, that was all, authorized by the US government for people to see. That's what they wanted you to see. And that's what happens all the time. So it's just an interesting thing when you really dig deep and you think and you wonder why people do what they do. I think human psychology is an incredibly fascinating thing, because I still don't understand people. I just don't get them. Right? You're like, how the fuck how do you not see that, dude? It's right there. And they're just like, oh, I'm like over here. No, it's the news said it's this. And you're just like, really? How do you not see that? But people are weird, man.
Yeah, we all are. I mean, I feel like the best way for me to kind of understand others is learning new, I guess, truth bombs about my own behavior that I was blinded to. You know what I mean? Because we all kind of have our blind spots, or our false allegiances, or areas of Stockholm syndrome in a lot of cases. So I don't know. I think that a way that I've gotten around a lot of that is just trying to get out of the space of theory and the words and and I'm a huge talker, and I'm a writer, I'm a huge talker, and just get into the practice, whether that practice is something that I know is going to elevate me into a new state of clarity, or just by getting into the actual moment. But a lot of stuff comes to you, and truth becomes much easier to see. It's not something I can fucking explain. But when I feel like when I get, and that another reason for not wanting to be on social media as much, as our brains really can't handle that much input. It jams the signal. So getting toward the fucking signal, things do become a lot easier that way. And this shit becomes a lot easier to navigate. But again, I think that we can get very stuck in theory, and we wind up not practicing, even if the practice is just simply living our lives and figuring out who the fuck we are, as opposed to just always being told.
Yeah, we're all just trying to figure it out, Tess. I mean, nobody, despite the bullshit that they're selling you, that they've got it all figured out. We're all just learning. We're just students, we're just figuring out life as we go. There's no hey, this is how you do it. You're forging your own path. And even those people that are out there espousing all of this shit to you, that, oh, I've got it all figured out, they've got their own insecurities.
Always.
They struggle with all that shit too, and they're making mistakes. So don't never buy the bullshit from the people that are out there trying to tell you they've got it all figured out, because they don't.
Yeah, no, nobody does. And if they did, they wouldn't be telling you what to do. So, because they
For
would
sure.
understand you need to figure it out yourself too.
For sure.
So,
Hey, well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. We've been on for like 2 hours. There's a couple of comments in here. I don't know if we want to go down that road, or let me just put that up. I don't even know what that is.
which, this one that just came up.
Yeah.
How do you think solar catastrophe plays into their plan? It depends on what you mean by solar catastrophe. Because I actually just kind of started looking into this, because I'm well aware that like there has been a huge uptick in solar flares, which has an enormous effect on human health and human behavior. The CIA even ran studies in some cases on certain people that it would enhance psychic abilities with. But on the flip side of that, people that have vulnerabilities, be it mental or physical health, it can make shit go haywire. We've been having a lot of solar storms lately, and it's fucking noticeable. But as far if you're referencing the 90-degree pole shift, if that's actually if that shit is actually real, which I have been paying attention to that. Some aspects of their plan actually make more sense in that context of like they seem like they're preparing for some shit too. You know what I mean? And if that is to happen, and there is to be a 90-degree pole shift, and we have a massive cataclysmic event, what they're doing by hurting all the people in certain areas and conserving all the resources and doing this, that, and the third, and kind of getting everything in a stronghold. And, whether it's bunkers or developing aircraft that can be airborne for at least a year, which they do have, that would align. If that's what you were referencing, I'm not sure if it was, but
well, let's hope
that's my answer.
Happen. Let's hope that doesn't happen. That doesn't.
I know that would be crazy. Like to be alive for that. Like holy shit.
I don't like that.
You can't do much about that, other than like maybe tactically pick a location that might not be underwater. But like I don't know where the fuck that is. There are people that are much better qualified to talk on that than me. It would definitely not be me. But that's an interesting thing though, and that actually is something that I'm paying attention to. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a lot more to learn about it.
Well, let's wrap it up, and I wanted to give you an opportunity just to kind of close it out with any words of encouragement or maybe final thoughts for the folks that are listening to this evening.
Well, I would say thank you. I guess if I had one message or one wish for everybody, it would be for all of us to no longer be afraid of love and each other and ourselves. So that is my wish for all of us, to no longer be afraid of love and ourselves, and to open up and let God out, because it is the great all is everywhere. And yeah, my name's Tesstamona, and you can find me at whatever link he shared in the show description if you want to connect via the interwebs, or follow any of the work that I do on Substack, or any new music that is upcoming.
Right on. I'm looking forward to any of your new songs. When are you releasing anything?
So I have a couple in the works, but the first one that's going to come out is called Algorithm Ghetto. I don't have a release date for it yet, because my artistry actually has gone under a major overhaul, as has the sound, and as has my tactics and delivery. So it's been like this beautiful, like underground, not telling anybody except maybe like 3 people that are like close, really shit about what I'm up to. But it's in development right now. Meaning like I'm in the studio actively recording it and laying down the vocals. But there have been a lot of changes to my approach, and also to my sound and production. So I was exploring a lot of that over the last few months. But Algorithm Ghetto will be next. And
Nice.
then it will be a lot more after Algorithm Ghetto. But that one, I mean, it'll be ready probably in a few weeks. As far as when I drop it or pick a release date, don't have one picked yet, but more will be revealed, as they say.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on, Tess. I appreciate it. And everybody who was here tonight, I want to thank you for joining in on the conversation, and go on and subscribe to Tess's Substack and check out her music over at her website. But again, remember, you can catch the rebroadcast of this. I upload to the podcast format of, or not format, but just the different platforms of iHeartRadio, Google, Spotify, and one more, Audible, I think. But yeah, and we've got some comfrey for sale on the website. You can go on there at Porterhouse and Teal or Porterhouse and Teal at gmail.com is where you can email me if you're interested in that. And remember to go out tomorrow and try to be better than you were today. And I just want to thank everybody again for joining us. It was an interesting conversation, and I look forward to having you on again to pick your brain and go on a deep dive with Tesstamona. So
Most
thanks again.
definitely. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you to everybody that was here for the live.
Yeah, for sure. See you guys.